the second question. It's two questions. It's what do you think about protein and what do you eat for protein? So this is related, obviously. Now, what do I think of protein? I think it's very essential. I think there's a lot of people out there talking about almost undermining protein and saying, oh, we don't need any protein, it's the protein myth. Well, the word protein means of prime importance. And I definitely don't think that these people that came up with this were just saying this just because they were addicted to meat or something. In fact, in ancient Greece there were vegan societies such as the one led by Pythagoras, and it was actually, they ate a lot of raw food. They were almost pretty much raw vegans, although I think they were maybe around 50% raw. They were eating some cooked food. And they were very strong. Pythagoras himself lived to be over 100 and could still wrestle and beat men 1/3 or even 1/5 of his age at 100. And this was on a vegan diet. And the origin of the word protein comes from Greek, and that kind of shows that perhaps we do need this nutrient, and there are people that say we can get by with very little of it, yet I've never seen someone that is really well built and still say that. Peter Ragnar himself recently has come out in an interview I heard on One Radio Network where he was saying, for years he's been saying, you know, the protein myth, he built a lot of muscle on a low protein regimen. You just had high calories and you get your protein that way. And yes, you do get a complete range of protein from fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, etc. But he's now taking Sunboyer protein, and you don't have to take protein powder by any means, but there are other high protein plant-based foods or even animal-based foods like I mentioned before that aren't flesh-based that you can take to supplement protein. And in my opinion, the best aspect of protein is that it's a very balancing energy source. So when we consume it, it's slow to break down and take apart, and people criticize it for that, saying, you know, sugar is ideal for fuel source because it's quick burning, and that's actually the detriment to sugar, is it's quick burning and it causes blood sugar imbalances, and whereas protein gives you an even keel. You don't need as much of it, so you can actually have a lower calorie diet if it's high in protein. You can still build mass. I have a friend who eats maybe 2,500 calories a day, even less sometimes, and he's a 180 plus pound bodybuilder, and he looks fantastic. He's not this skinny little raw vegan touting that saying we don't need protein. You know, you really have to look at the person who's saying that and look at their body type. For them, that's working if they're an endurance athlete, but you know, there aren't any fruitarian bodybuilders that are as successful as even some of the raw vegan bodybuilders that are including higher protein foods. Now, the issue that people bring up with when people talk about higher protein diets is the whole thing with them causing cancer. But the research has only shown this to be with high animal product consumption, and that's specifically casein in dairy. However, the China study was, isolated casein. It was not raw. It was most likely non-organic cows, and also because it was Holstein dairy, which is the most widespread used dairy, the casein molecule is actually different than the casein molecule in Jersey milk dairy. And Jersey milk is a smaller cow. It's a brown, sort of hairier, thick, coarse-haired cow, and the casein in that cow is apparently more easy to break down. And this is just an evidence that the more hybridized and out of touch from nature that we take an animal or plant, the more problems it potentially can bring to us. So yeah, the Holstein cow, which is the black and white spotted typical cow, and it is the one that's responsible for the higher rates of cancers in people that consume a lot of this type of casein. So very quickly, I'll list off some of my favorite protein sources for me personally. Number one is greens. You know, green juice, sprouts, green algae. These are all very high in protein. Obviously, sprouts and algae and other green leafy vegetables, they're very low calorically dense, but so if you're juicing them, for instance, you're getting a lot in one, and you actually do get a significant amount of protein if your juice is, for example, 50% sprouts, and if those are sprouts or sunflower and pea shoots, it's very high in protein. Then you have, again, the algae, which are spirulina, chlorella, E3 live. Those are very high in protein. Like a tablespoon of spirulina, which is the highest protein source, whole food protein source on the planet, it's around 70%. That, that right there is over 5 grams of protein in a tablespoon. Plus, in plant sources, it's generally more free amino acids, so it's very easily digestible. Then, of course, there's hemp seeds are a complete form of protein, chia seeds. Another one I use often is whey powder, eggs, bee pollen, maca, goji berries. The list goes on, but I'm consuming these at different times. I'm not always consuming them all at once. I've got another article I posted below the one I already mentioned earlier in the video that you can check called Vegetarian Protein Sources. That's a long list of complete vegetarian protein sources that are generally high in protein as well. And you can look at that list if you want to get some ideas of the vast abundance that is available in terms of protein sources on a raw vegan diet. It doesn't have to be vegan, it can be a raw diet if you're consuming eggs or dairy in this way. So I hope you have a great week. Ask more questions throughout the week, and I'll see you next Sunday, plus the other videos throughout the week.